Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the webinar hosted by the Secretariat of the Basel Rotterdam Stockholm Conventions on unlocking climate and investment opportunities through environmentally sound management of food wastes. Today is the International Day on Zero Waste, which has been established 3 years ago. It's an opportunity to celebrate the actions taken to prevent the generation of wastes and reflect collectively on what we could further do on that topic to reduce the amount of waste and manage it in an environmentally sound manner. Today, we will focus specifically on food and other organic wastes, reflecting on how we can prevent the generation of that waste, turn it into a climate mitigation action, while ensuring that we also control the pollution impacts these actions may have, with the underlying question being, what concrete actions can the stakeholders involved take? Governments, local authorities, private sector. How can we move from commitment to implementation or further move in that direction? We will be having today a few speakers, if I can see the next slide. I myself, I'm the General Director of the French Solid Waste Partnership, co-organizer of this webinar. We will then hear Rolf Baillet will share some introductory keynote message. He is the Executive Secretary of the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions. We'll then hear about the Zero Waste Foundation, represented by Carlos Silva Filo, and Aditi Ramola will be speaking on behalf of ISWA, the International Solid Waste Association. We'll then hear from specific angles or specific geographies with Siddiqa Sultana from Bangladesh, who is the Executive Director of the Environment and Social Development Organization in Bangladesh. Then Camille Taon will share some specific examples also from around the world through the Climate and Clean Air Coalition Secretariat program that she is contributing to manage. And finally, we will hear from Carolina Urmeneta, who's the program director of the Global Methane Hub. We'll share some thoughts more on the financing angle. On that, I would like to ask Rolf Baillet to share a few words to introduce this webinar. Dear Rolf, your floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Corinne, and thank you so much for making time to participate in this webinar. So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues and friends, good afternoon, and of course, good morning for those of you in the West, and good morning and good evening for those of you in the East. It's a pleasure for me to open this webinar with you today as we observe the International Day of Zero Waste and focus on a topic that sits at the intersection of climate action, sustainable development, and investment opportunity. And that is the environmentally sound management of food waste. Let me begin by thanking our co-organizers and partners, including the Household Waste Partnership of the Basel Convention, the French Solid Waste Partnership, the International Solid Waste Association, and of course, all our speakers and participants who are joining us for this very important webinar. Your presence today reflects the growing recognition that food waste is not only an environmental issue, but also a development, climate, and investment issue that deserves much greater attention. Food waste is more than an inefficiency or externality. It is a systemic leak of value impacting the individual customer, food manufacturer, producer, farmer, and so on. Every ton of food wasted represents lost water, land, labor, as well as capital, all of which sits at the intersection of global challenges we face today. When organic waste is mismanaged and sent to landfills, it becomes a major source of methane, a very powerful, short-lived climate force. Preventing waste and managing organics properly is therefore a practical, cost-effective way to reduce emissions in the near term while protecting livelihoods and ecosystems as well. When handled in an environmentally sound manner, food and organic waste generate multiple, mutually reinforcing benefits, such as climate mitigation through rapid reductions in methane emissions through prevention, source separation, and treatment, as well as capturing those methane emissions as a renewable source of energy. Reversing land degradation, soil infertility, and food security through increased use of compost and digestate, restore nutrients that improve resilience of agricultural systems. Local economic development that creates new jobs in collection, processing, and circular value chains. Energy generation from biomethane and biogas, thus reducing our dependence on fossil fuels. And the list goes on, of course, but I will give one final point. Public health and environment health from reduced pollution, reduced disease vectors, and safer waste streams. So such global and local benefits make food waste management an attractive proposition for governments, cities, municipalities, as well as investors seeking measurable nature impact. So after I've said all this, why are we lagging behind on SDG 12.3? International legally binding treaties and Basel Convention provide a shared foundation for environmentally sound management. However, its success depends on translating frameworks into practical systems, prevention programs, reliable source separation, accessible treatment infrastructure, and safe disposal where necessary. While prevention must be our first priority, downstream approaches, as mentioned before, provides plenty of opportunities for climate mitigation and reversing land degradation. To move from pilots to scale, we must indeed remove the barriers that keeps projects, those types of projects, from attracting important capital. Examples would include adopting a standardized measurement criteria so methane reductions and co-benefits can be quantified, monetized, and made public. De-risking investments using a number of instruments such as blended finance, guarantees, and public seed funding. Creating predictable markets for compost, biomethane, and recycled organics through procurement and other regulatory approaches. Building capacity to municipal and national levels to design bankable projects and operate systems in a sustainable manner. Concrete entry points and partnerships along those key priorities, which may include at the policy level, policy alignment across agriculture, waste, energy, and finance ministries. City level pilots that demonstrate replicable business models. Public-private partnerships that combine technical expertise with capital. Knowledge sharing to scale proven approaches and avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. Inclusion of stakeholders, such as smallholders, informal workers, and communities in the design and benefits around reducing food pollution. This year, we indeed have a rare opportunity to turn a persistent problem into a source of climate action, jobs, and resilience. By prioritizing prevention and investing in environmentally sound treatment, as well as mobilizing finance, I believe we can unlock measurable progress that benefits people and the planet. Once again, thank you so much for inviting me to open this conversation and for bringing your expertise to the table. I look forward to the practical ideas and partnerships that will emerge from today's discussion. Thank you very much. And over to you, Corey.
Thank you very much, Rolf, for these inspiring thoughts. We will continue now the discussion to look at this full picture. Prevention first, environmentally sound management, especially when waste streams have been contaminated, because otherwise, actually, organic matter is a resource and not a waste. And the policy and investment conditions that we need to move from commitment to action and to accelerate action. So over to Carlos to start with that prevention angle. Carlos is representing the Zero Waste Foundation, which was created shortly after the UN resolution was passed to establish Zero Waste Day as a means to actually promote prevention actions. So your general framing is around prevention, though you also realize the importance of environmentally sound management of waste. Carlos, from your perspective, what are the most effective actions that governments, businesses, citizens can actually take to reduce food waste at source? And how can these actions actually be linked to a wider climate and zero waste strategy?
Thank you, Corinne. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much for this invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today representing the Zero Waste Foundation. And after being the former president of ISVA, to connect these two areas of sound waste management and zero waste. So looking both upstream and mostly upstream and downstream in order to ensure that we don't have impacts and prevent the triple planetary crisis. So going directly to answering your question, I would highlight 4 points, 4 very important points that in our opinion are like the pathways towards a zero waste future and towards a zero food waste future, because this is the topic of this year's International Day of Zero Waste. First, I would say we need data-driven action, because once waste is measured, it can be reduced and it can be properly managed. So this is the first important point. Second one is that we need to improve city-level leadership. I follow the remarks from Ralph, and it's very important that we understand that cities where food is distributed, consumed, and discarded become hubs of improvement and implementation of action. Third, I would say we need also these joint initiatives through zero waste business models. We need retailers being incentivized to redesign their systems, restaurants to rethink menus and portioning, and we need a kind of like a joint approach towards digital platforms to avoid food wastage. And I would say the fourth point is connecting all of these. We need policy and governance to go further with ambition. We already see many countries and cities adopting strategies to prevent waste, and especially food waste, supported by regulations, incentives, and behavioral nudges. But it's really important that these instruments recognize the topic as both climate action, climate solution, improvement of lifestyle, of like more benefits to the people in order to improve food security and also an integrated action. So what I would really say here is through the Zero Waste Foundation and under Turkey's leadership on zero waste, we know that we have the unique opportunity to strengthen international collaboration and exchange practical solutions to elevate food loss and waste reduction as a key climate priority towards what I've been advocating for some years now, towards a 3D future, a future where we decouple economic growth from waste generation from economic growth, when we decontaminate the products and the environment, and in which we decarbonize our economies, but I know it will be a topic for one of the next speakers. Thank you very much, and looking forward to a fruitful discussion.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for sharing these enablers that you've identified to actually accelerate the actions in terms of prevention. And maybe we also need to keep in mind that these actions are all local solutions tailored to their local context. So all these prevention actions led by cities that you were mentioning as a key leadership component are all different, but can be inspired from each other. And that's where you bring in that collaboration. Thank you very much for sharing that. Now, once we've heard about that prevention component, we also want to make sure that once actually waste is generated, it is treated and managed in a way that mitigates climate impacts, but also pollution impacts. And I want to turn over to Aditi. Now, Aditi Ramola from the International Solid Waste Association. Actually, non-contaminated organic waste is a resource for soils and an energy source. But could you share now with us the main environmentally sound pathways for managing organic wastes, both as a resource and as a risk for climate and the environment?
Thank you so much, Corinne. It's a real pleasure to be part of this discussion together with all our other partners on Day of Zero Waste. So happy Zero Waste Day, everybody. I'm just going to echo what Rolf and Carlos have said already, but I'm bringing in the ISWA framework or ISWA perspective. And from an ISWA perspective, the starting point is very clear for us. When we talk about the environmentally sound management of organic waste, we're not only talking about waste treatment, we're also talking about how to manage these materials in a way that reduces methane emissions, of course, protects public health and the environment, and also importantly recognizes this as a resource. So organic waste as a resource, as you mentioned. So this is very critical in a broader context, because if you have read the Food Waste Index reports from the last few years, UNEP is highlighting that while more than 700 million people still face hunger around the globe, nearly 1/3 of the waste of the food that we are producing is either lost or wasted. And at the same time, it's estimated that food waste alone is almost 7 to 10% of the impacts of GHG emissions. It's responsible for that much within the whole climate framework. So addressing this is not only just a waste issue, it's also critical for climate, food systems, and in the broader sense, the development priority as well. So the first point I'd like to make is that both Rolf and Carlos have mentioned that prevention must remain a priority. The best waste, the best organic waste, and especially the best food waste is the waste that's never generated in the first place. Preventing food waste basically is going to avoid emission, as we just heard, and it's going to lessen the pressures on the waste systems that we manage. But even when waste prevention strategies are very strongly in place, organic waste is still going to be generated. So there's always going to be a component of organic waste that's going to be generated. And so the question then becomes is that, okay, once we have it, how do we manage it in an environmentally sustainable manner that delivers benefits to human health and also climate benefits and so on? So that was your question. So in practical terms, what does that mean? The main pathways will, of course, include source separation, solutions like composting, AD, BSF, and wherever necessary, because all of these are context specific. Whenever, if there is open dumping still in place, you need to make sure that overall landfill management and safer final disposal is still in place as well. So, the contexts are different globally. Of course, the suitability, as I mentioned, of these solutions is going to be very, very specific to the location and also what's happening in the region. But I think the most critical issue, and you've mentioned it, and Carlos has mentioned it as well, it's the level of contamination that we see in our organic waste. And this is something that ISWA has worked on in our recent practitioner guide on preventing and managing contaminants in organic waste recycling. I will put in the link for this publication once I'm done, because here we show that contamination is not only a marginal issue, it's extremely central to whether organic waste can be safely recycled and whether the outputs that we get, whether it's compost, whether it's digestate or anything that you're getting from the BSF production, or even energy, whether it is of sufficient quality and value. So I will talk about that a little bit, because source separation is an enabling condition. And clean organic waste allows us to move up the value chain and also move away from just disposal, safe disposal, and to recovery. And I just want to mention and just emphasize that organic waste is not just something to manage, but it's something that is a resource. And for example, through composting, and again, the speakers before me have mentioned, we return nutrients to soils and we support agriculture. Through anaerobic digestion, we are getting energy out of it. We are producing biogas or methane, biomethane. It can be used as transportation fuel depending on the quality and the extraction levels. And then, of course, your climate opportunity becomes extremely tangible at this point, because when methane is used as a replacement for fossil fuels, whether it's for electricity, for heat, for transportation, it directly reduces the emissions from the fossil fuel sector. So it's not about only managing it, but it's also about avoiding fossil emissions. And Carlos, referenced the 3D narrative. And seriously, I've been listening to this for the last 2 years. Rolf and Carlos both have mentioned it in their speeches before. So I just want to mention that, it's a real business and investment opportunity. It's supporting our transition away from fossil fuel dependence. And the question becomes the 3D future, which basically means that we're ensuring that we protect human health and the environment, soils, water. We're decarbonizing or defossilizing, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and also decoupling virgin material use through recycling nutrients and so on and so forth. So all these 3 dimensions have to be considered together. And I say this because if you have a solution that produces energy, but it's spreading contamination, it's not environmentally sound. And on the flip side, if you have a technical solution without the right policy or market condition, it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be scaling up in the long run. And it's just to say that all this I'm talking about is not just theoretical. Of course, we at ISWA, we develop really good knowledge products, but we also work on implementation projects on the ground. And through our biological treatment of waste, where we work on these topics, we also worked with UNEP in cities in Brazil to actually estimate how much food waste was being generated in a few cities. And we saw that prevention, when it's coupled with source separation and locally appropriate solutions, and also aligning with national policies, give us the best results over a long period of time. So just to conclude, because my 5 minutes are up, the pathways, of course, is first prevention, which has been mentioned quite a number of times already. We need to talk about clean source separation. But then, of course, followed by environmentally sound management and treatment with all the technologies that I mentioned. And so once these are in place, it will allow us to reduce methane. It's going to allow us to replace fossil fuels. And of course, in the end, create viable circular economy models and business models that are actually viable in the long run. And people can actually invest in projects that are so-called bankable. So that's my input for now. Corinne, back to you.
Thank you so much, Aditi, for pointing out these opportunities that can be turned into investment opportunities with the safeguards on ensuring that pollution is under control And also, you've highlighted the need for some enablers in terms of having a system that works. So the whole institutional system that is behind this, and market stability for business models to work. We'll hear more about this from the next speakers. But first, I want to turn over to Siddiqa Sultana from Bangladesh to share some specific examples from Bangladesh on how organics diversion has worked or is working, and the challenges that arise when you have contaminated waste streams and systems that are not yet in place. So Siddiqa, over to you to share some insights from Bangladesh, please.
Thank you, Karina. I'm really happy to be part of this event. So from my organization, Environment and Social Development Organization, ESTO, working on sustainable development, environmental protection, climate resilience, and zero waste initiative across communities in Bangladesh. From our experience, what you just asking in Bangladesh and other emerging economics, the most immediate priority is very clear. Divert organic waste from dump sites through prevention and source separation. And this is one of the fastest and most cost-effective ways to reduce the methane emissions. But the reality on the ground presents fundamental challenges there. In many cities, waste systems are still designed for collecting and disposal, not for methane reduction or resource recovery. As a result, waste is mixed. Organic materials are contaminated with plastics and hazardous substances, and most of it ends up in open dumps or poorly managed landfills, often without gas capture systems. This leads to anaerobic decomposition and significant methane emissions in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh alone, the waste sector generated about 26.95 million tons of carbon dioxide, equivalent in 2022, accounting for roughly 10 to 11% of total national emissions. So it is. So it's first it is the happening. So it's a real scenario of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Siddiqa, for these insights specific to Bangladesh. I'd like to turn over to Camille Taon from the Secretariat of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Camille, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition is actually funding a significant number of projects that aim to reduce methane emissions from organic waste. Maybe can you share some of the lessons learned from these projects to go back to my question earlier on which policy and institutional conditions have proven most effective in helping countries set up projects that work? Over to you, Camille.
Yes, thank you very much, Corinne. And I'm Camille Taon, and I manage the waste project portfolio at the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Just a few words for those who don't know, the CCAC is a UNEP-convened partnership. We are working with 200 countries and organizations to reduce short-lived climate pollutants. And as you mentioned, Corinne, waste-related projects represent the largest portfolio within the CCAC. So it reflects that both the significant share of CCAC investment in the waste sector, but also the strong demand from countries seeking support to translate their commitments into action. But we've seen that turning ambition into implementation, it requires more than political commitments. That countries need clear strategies, they need municipal level support and strong international cooperation to make those commitments a reality. But there is encouragingly political momentum. We've seen that in the recent COP, outcomes have elevated waste as a climate and development priority. And an increasing number of countries are also including waste-related measures in their NDCs and regional initiatives. And there is a particular focus on organic waste and on open burning. And at the same time, we see that consultations reveal that there is implementation constraints. And those include limited service coverage, infrastructure gaps, weak enforcement in certain countries, but also fragmented mandates across actors. There are also financial sustainability challenges and really difficulties in translating technical analysis into financed implementation. And those challenges, they really point to the need for a more implementation-focused, financing-aware and country-driven approach. And this is really where the CCAC support countries depending on their context. For instance, in countries where policy ambitions and project pipelines are advancing, we are focusing on targeted support focused on prevention, diversion, and treatment of organic waste. I can give you the example of a project we funded in Chile, where the Recycle Organic program has embedded organic waste diversion into national climate and waste policy. And they really supported municipalities to receive support for composting, anaerobic digestion, and landfill methane mitigation. And that was embedded into Chile's national organic waste strategies, which aim to increase municipal organic waste recovery from around 1% today to 66% by 2044. But there are also countries where service coverage, controlled disposal, and governance remain limited. And here the CCAC really focuses on foundational measures such as open burning reduction, strengthening waste services, and the gradual development of waste and wastewater systems. And here a good example is the project we funded in Indonesia, which has delivered measurable reductions in open burning and dumping. And by June 2025, the initiative extended waste collection services to more than 600,000 people and prevented more than 73,000 tons of waste from leaking to the environment. And it also achieved sustained closure of open burning hotspots. So all of this to show that open burning can be reduced at scale when reliable waste services are in place and linked to clear local accountabilities. And here I also want to say that the key success is broader engagement beyond environment ministries, and that it requires involvement from finance, planning, agriculture, infrastructure, health, and economic sectors. So it requires strong coordination horizontally across national institutions, but also vertically, because cities and regions are a central service delivery. And aside from this, it's very important also that the project developments are inclusive, so actively engaging local communities and involving the informal sector, because they always play a critical role in waste collection and recycling, and integrating them in the formal systems. It improves efficiency, supports livelihoods, and really increase the sustainability and local ownership of projects. And I think Aditi mentioned it already, but framing waste methane mitigation within wider development priorities further strengthen political ownership and investment when it's linked to job creation, public health, sanitation, and local economic development. So I think I'm running out of time. In conclusion, I just wanted to say that reducing methane from organic waste is achievable when political commitment is backed by strong national strategies, cross-sectoral coordination, and inclusive local approaches with access to technical support and financing. And I think that that's by taking this very holistic, context-driven, and inclusive approach that countries can transform waste ambition into very concrete and sustainable action. Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you very much, Camille, for highlighting that the need for both this vertical coordination and transversal across sector. So from political commitment all the way to tailored local actions in terms of vertical coordination and transversal across sectors and stakeholder groups. This is actually maybe where the value of this household waste partnership of the Basel Convention comes in. It actually has the ambition, and that's what it's doing in its working groups, to connect the legal frameworks, the practical guidance, and the implementation to support local actions in terms of environmentally sound management of waste and methane mitigation associated to the organic waste management. Now, I'd like to turn over to Carolina Urmeneta from the Global Methane Hub. And here again, we have a focus on methane, same as with CCAC, even though we've heard several times that the opportunity and the risk lay both in the methane and the pollution mitigation, but we'll keep a methane angle here again. The Global Methane Hub, do we have Carolina?
Yes, here I am.
Okay, I didn't see your picture come up. Yeah, okay. Carolina, the Global Methane Hub has the mandate to accelerate action on the ground to reduce methane emissions. That's your mandate. Can you share with us today what makes mitigation of organic waste projects actually bankable? How do you create a sound pipeline of projects and unlock the financing to make them happen?
Yes, thank you, Corinne, and thank you for organizing this to the Basel Convention and everyone that is behind the organization of this webinar, right? Very happy to be here with you, and very happy also to have this fourth day on zero waste and with the focus on food waste, right? I am from Chile, and I'm representing today the Global Methane Hub as the Program Director for Waste and Circular Economy. And as you were saying, methane has bring more attention to this agenda because of the opportunity that we have on the climate change policy discussion and agenda to drive and to bring some attention to the sector and some opportunities, right? At the Global Methane Hub, we support different activities as data and MRV, so very happy to hear a lot of talking about that, about transparency and about how to have robust data and policies to drive action. We also support policies at national and subnational level. We have heard a lot about the subnationals. They are the ones that are going to implement and mobilize funds for this. So that's very important. And also capacity building and finance mobilization. And because you are asking, Corinne, about that, I think it is crucial, as it has been said, that we need to have data and policies. But in order to mobilize finance, we need also to understand where the opportunity is. And in those terms, methane is a good driver, right? What we are seeing, for example, and there are some good mobilization that is happening now, is opportunities, for example, on the biomethane generation and the climate change finance on carbon markets and how to demonstrate the mitigation that we are having. So, for example, Swiss and Chile, Camille was mentioning Chile too, we launched together a program for carbon markets. And one of the first projects that was approved was a landfill and improved on biogas generation and biogas capture and energy generation from a landfill that increased its efficiency, right? So we generate more than what it is committed in our NDC. We go beyond that, right? And that's really important. In a similar approach, there are many countries working, for example, on program of activities to group different type of projects on composting, black soldier flies, anaerobic digestion, etc., to present this. Because we need and we know that for the waste sector, we need to support the capex, right, the investment, and have a mobilization on that, but also the operation expenditures, right? And for that, carbon markets might be a good opportunity. And when we talk about investment, I want also to highlight that for this sector, the multilateral development banks, and the private sector in general with the finance sector are getting more interest in this type of projects. Why? Because they are seeing a good mobilization, right? Because we are seeing that there are more policies, as Camille and Aditi were sharing on new policies with specific targets regarding methane mitigation. And we have good partnerships that I want to highlight. For example, in Latin America, we have the Too Good to Waste initiative with the Inter-American Development Bank. They have committed that their complete portfolio of waste is going to have a 30% of methane mitigation target by 2030, and the CH4D platform with the World Bank. And let me tell you, because of the network that all of us together, right, have mobilized, and because of the expertise that we have, of course, we have gaps, right, and we need to support more activities. And I'm going to end with this idea, because there are things that are moving, and the waste sector can be a sector that reduce methane emissions in a short-term period. We are seeing the mobilization, and I'm happy to share with you that there are more like 35 jurisdictions at a global level, mainly in the global south, that are getting finance mobilization of around $5 billion with these MDBs on concrete projects that are going to be implemented in the next years, right? We need a lot more, right? The finance gap that we have is more than 20 billions, right? So this is not enough at all. But we need to use the opportunity that we are seeing in order to demonstrate again that the waste sector and the food waste approach is a cost-effective approach to reduce methane emissions in a short-term period. So that is what's going on. We, Global Methane Hub, as a philanthropic effort, and I know I am on time, we are here to support this type of actions. So happy to continue the discussion and the mobilization. Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you very much, Carolina, for sharing your insights and these numbers also on the extent of the financing gap we're facing. I'd like to close our panel discussion before we turn on to questions from the audience, which I'm not seeing from the interface I have, so we'll have to see. I'll rely on the BRS Secretariat to feed us some questions if they see some that are relevant. If you think about any questions, as I'm closing this round table discussion, feel free to feed your question in the chat. I'm going to turn now to each of our panelists and ask them 2 questions that they have to answer in a very short amount of words, just very punchy. One concrete action that either governments, industry, cities, civil society could take now to deliver a measurable impact on the ground. So the first step that we need. And then the second question is one barrier that we collectively as a community need to address to make things move faster. I'll start with Carlos and then move on around our panelists roundtable.
Thank you, Corinne. Thank you very much. I would say like joining both groups, not only governments at one side and communities on the other side, I would say collaboration. We cannot move, we cannot improve if we continue working in silos. We really need to shape global partnerships that translate ambition into implementation. And as a practical example of what I mean by collaboration, I would like to highlight the food waste breakthrough launched at COP30 last year, an initiative that brings together governments, cities, businesses, and civil society to accelerate progress towards SDG 12.3, because this is a very important point. And we do have a goal to achieve. The SDG 12.3 give us this north. And this cross-cutting collaboration from the food waste breakthrough is helping us to mobilize technical support and resources to scale locally led solutions. So what I would say is like we are really, we are already seeing leadership across regions. And like from the food waste breakthrough, I would like to highlight the roles and the champions such as Japan, United Kingdom, and Brazil, whose achievements are really showing us that this transition is possible and that we can make this change happen.
Thank you so much, Carlos. So I'll ask the next speakers to be a bit more concise. Over to Aditi.
Thanks a lot, Corinne. Well, I think I've actually been thinking about the question that Yobel has written in the chat, so I don't know how to be so concise. He and I both know that OPEX is something that we all struggle with, which is the operational expenditure. And his question actually directly links to that. If I can very briefly answer him, if you just give me like 1 minute,
Go ahead.
okay?
We'll do a
Yeah,
mix of
because
the Q&A
he's brought up an
and the
extremely good
closing the
point.
roundtable. That's good.
Yeah, and it's about something that we struggle with. And Yobel, you and I have had this discussion for many years now. Finance is currently flowing to places that banks and other IFIs consider structured and bankable and financeable and investable and whatever other words they use. They need an ROI, a return on investment. They have a particular percentage that they need on this because people are putting money down. So when we see, and these usually tend to be big projects, large projects, big landfills, big energy plants, and so on and so forth, right? We know this. And source separation is not really considered to be an investable project because it's looked upon as a public service and it remains underfunded. So, I mean, because I've been thinking about what you've asked and it's something we've discussed before, I think we need to do at least 3 things. First, we need to ring fence that we are going to be able to get financing through public funds, whether it's IFIs, banks, through blended finance models, whatever. That there are windows of financing, funding mechanisms that are actually just ring fence for our purpose, for this whole clean organic waste and so on and so forth. We need to then, of course, link to revenue streams. That's basically linking collection systems with downstream value chains, because when we collect separately, the value is higher. And whether it's better compost, better biomethane, and so on, so that investors see this whole full system. And then, of course, I mean, because I have to keep it short, we should have this discussion of, I think, off screen as well. We need to change incentive metrics because currently finance is driven by tons of treated waste or the amount of energy generated and so on and so forth. And Caro has mentioned, like we need to see value of methane avoided through diversion and separate collection. So how does prevention get counted into better financing mechanisms? So because without investing in separate collection, we are basically financing end of pipe solutions, which we don't want. We want to move upstream. We talked about prevention and so on and so forth. So very good question. I have only 1 minute to answer, but very, very quickly. Thanks. Sorry, Corinne.
Thank you so much, Aditi. Maybe we get back to that question again. Over to Sidika.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I missed the first questions, but I answered this. That we must prioritize the waste prevention and reducing food loss across supply chains and encouraging responsible consumption. And second, source separation is essential. But Aditi already mentioned that. Simple as 2 or 3 bin systems at a household and institutional levels can dramatically improve outcomes. And third, we need to scale decentralized context appropriate solutions, and composting remains a highly viable given the high organic content of our waste. So is Black Soldiers Fly systems offer low-cost scalable options for larger waste generations such as markets and food industries. Anaerobic digestion can convert waste into biogas and organic fertilizer. However, as a contamination remains one of the biggest barriers. What do you say that? What is the barrier? When organic waste is mixed, biological treatment becomes inefficient or even unworkable, raising the cost and limiting the resource recovery. At the same time, many municipalities face constraints in infrastructure and technical capacity and financing, leading to the continued reliance on landfill. So I know it's that you don't have much time, but I want to just a little bit more. I just shared at the policy level of Bangladesh, NDC 3.0 provides direction, including a target to reduce waste sector emissions by around 1.78 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent by 2035 through landfill gas recovery, waste to energy, and integrated waste management. Even with strong diversion efforts, safe final disposal is still essential. And this means moving from open dumping to engined sanitary landfills with proper gas captures and leachate management. But achieving this transition requires a significant investment over 116 billion US dollars for overall NDC's implementation.
Oops. Looks like we've lost Sidika. Well, thank you, Sidika, for your thoughts. We're going to move on to Camille Taon for just a few words
Yes.
on one concrete action, one barrier that we can collectively address.
Yes, on concrete action, I'm not going to talk about prevention since it has been covered by Aditya and completely agree with you. I think expanding reliable municipal organic waste collection and treatment service.
Sorry, it was my internet is unstable.
Yeah, sorry, Sidika. We'll listen to Camille Taon and you can come in again later. Camille.
Thanks. And the barrier to
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. I think, and the barrier to address is the fragmented mandates and recoordination across sectors and levels, which really limit the ability to translate technical plans into bankable, implementable projects.
Thank you so much. Over to Carolina for a few words.
Yes, thank you. So totally agree with the previous interventions and answers. I think it's really important to be concrete on what we are talking about and recognize the reality in the territories, right? In the Global South, we are not looking for projects that are tremendous in terms of waste to energy projects. That was one of the mentions in the chat, right, that Aditi was referring to. We have 10% of the GDP per capita that other countries in the global north have, right? And our energy could be much cheaper because of the renewables, right? So I think we need also to consider what is the reality in the countries to design the projects. We expend more than 70% of the waste budget in transport, right? So considering decentralized solutions, as mentioned, it is a good opportunity, right? And it's also a good opportunity because we need to recover the nutrients. We have a soil degradation agenda that is huge, that we need to recognize in the Global South, and we need to improve. And we have also a biodiversity agenda. So how to use and how to recover the nutrients that we have in the organic waste is critical in order to think in our development. So I think that is one of the opportunities ahead, looking the collaboration in between us and also in other agendas that are going to demand the products that we are going to generate. Done with my minute.
Thank you so much. We would have time maybe for one more question. I don't know if there is one that one of you as panelists have seen as to come up that you'd like to address. In the meantime, as you reflect on this, I'll just summarize briefly what I've heard from you say regarding these concrete actions that need to be taken. I've heard collaboration and not both transversal and vertical collaboration that Camille has also quite developed her points on. Recover energy because it will then bring a financing stream also. Decentralized solutions, I've heard that also, especially from Sidika, and that could also address some of that transport issue that we have. Establish a system that works. So that's a concrete action that might be more for the long term, but that is really necessary. Regarding the barriers, I've got 2 points. The fragmented mandate Camille pointed on to, but also that OPEX, because the bankable projects will not work if the OPEX doesn't work. So ensuring that OPEX works, and how can this be done? Actually, harnessing the recovered energy is one way. Looking at organic wastes to be collected before it really becomes waste, but looking at it as a resource so that it can be transformed into soil amendments and energy production, are ways to support the OPEX on this particular waste stream that is organic and food waste. Did some of you as panelists want to address one more questions from the chat?
I'm typing, Corinne. I'm typing to.
You're answering the questions directly in the chat, you mean? Okay,
Yes.
then perfect. Then on this, because we're getting to the end of our webinar, I just want to conclude that indeed food waste prevention is the priority. It's the priority for all of us. This is what we want to celebrate today, actions that go in this direction. And for this to happen, we need local actions by cities, looking at decentralized options. The financing of these actions, which is lagging today, needs to be supported by making the climate and potential pollution impacts visible. If we do not prevent food waste, if we do not collect at source so that it is a resource rather than a damage control that we need to do, then we can actually reduce methane emissions, and we can actually generate energy, generate value through nutrients, etc. So making those avoided impacts visible. Organic waste management is both an opportunity and a risk. So once waste has become, once this organic material is becoming waste, it's entering the waste stream. It has to be managed as two things, as an opportunity and a risk. It's an opportunity to reduce methane emissions, to harness energy still, even if it's been contaminated. But it is also a risk because that contamination cannot be allowed to enter the environment in an uncontrolled way. So we can drive private investments and public investments to organic waste management, but that requires safeguards and incentives and policy frameworks. On this, I wish you all a very good zero waste day.